Yes, hello everyone, and I have the pleasure to introduce to you my colleague Andy Hodson. Andy is a professor in glaciology at the Department of Arctic Geology at UNIS. He's also an adjunct professor at the Western Norway University of Applied Science in Sondal. Andy's research focuses on the implications of ground thaw and ice melt for water, sediment, and nutrient release into runoff. And he's particularly interested in microbial ecosystems at ice margins as well as in glaciers. And Andy has worked on Svalbard, Greenland, and Antarctica, and he is currently PI on the NFR-funded project Climate-Driven Methane Outgassing at Terrestrial and Marine Terminating Glaciers and Margins. And he is currently on sabbatical, and I believe he is joining us from the UK. But you can correct me if I'm wrong, Andy. Welcome.
That's right, Anna. Thank you very much. I'm in North Wales, so I think the storm has left us a few days ago and it might be hitting Svalbard now or mainland Norway. So last time I had a meeting, it was quite hairy here. Shall I just begin?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm not too familiar with these meetings, and so the talk I bring you is one of the many sort of fun projects that's ended up being part of teaching at UNIS. And I mean, it's a research into teaching story, because I guess a lot of you know that UNIS has this amazing opportunity for research-led teaching. And it's kind of got to the point with some of our guest lecturers, we have to control their research ambitions while they're contributing to our courses. So this is an unusual story, though. I do have to be careful with what I say about a couple of the actors in this story. I'll treat it with as much respect as I can, or dignity as I can. It's quite fun, though. And it's a good example of how the more I reflect on working for Svalbard for 33 years or so, is the teaching just becomes more fun there, and it gets more and more important to me. But a lot of this is research integration into teaching, and then a little bit of an experience as a former head of department thinking about how to maintain research-led teaching in curricula. So that'll be probably some of the more useful side discussions that you can have after a talk like this. I better get on with it, though. I told you there's a bit of a story. There is a cast, and none of what you're about to hear would have happened if it wasn't for Robert Hermansen at the time, who was the director of a local coal mining company that in Svalbard, which has got quite strong links to my department, because obviously I'm in a geology department, and there's this rich legacy of mining in the area. But Robert Hermansen wanted some side projects to diversify, and he spoke to Monica Christensen, now Monica Christensen Solus, who was, I don't know how well the audience know Monica. She's one of your latter sort of, horrible term, polar heroes, but she's a Cambridge PhD educated glaciologist who is currently just finishing managing the Ny-Ålesund International Scientific Research Station. And she knew Robert from the old days, and he recruited her to build a team to do some glaciology as one of these side projects, and I will explain more in due course. But Monica knew us from our time in Ny-Ålesund, so that's me in 2007 there. I was at Sheffield at the time, and then a few other actors, if you like. Bernard Le Fauconnier, a sort of French glaciologist working with the Polar Institute at the time. His career was quite late to glaciology, but he did some very significant field-based research with Jon Ove Hagen, then of, can't remember, it might have been Tromsø, it might have been NPI or Oslo or whatever. But Jon Ove is Norway's favorite glaciologist. He's a fantastic emeritus professor at Oslo now. And then just for fun, I show it. I never done field work with an infant before, but there's Emma, now an adult, of course. This was in about 2006 and 7. And so we were the team that were asked to assemble a project. There were people from UNIS involved. I'll protect them from this. But no, I'll name them: Carl Bergild and a few others, and even Hannah, I don't think you were really involved in this. But also, yeah, Doug Ben had a little bit of engagement with this project, and it was a fun project. The idea was to build an ice hotel in a local ice cap using mining technologies. And you can see some rather naff looking ice hotel experiences there from the internet, probably constructed from either ice blocks cut from lakes or just wooden plywood sprayed with water and allowed to freeze. Quite unlike what Robert Hermansen was planning at the time. And this map was presented to us, and I'll take you through the site a bit later. And you'll see there's a mine there underneath an ice cap. And the idea was to construct an ice cap hotel by excavating through the ice and, yeah, on top of a mountain and having rooms well within an ice cap. And there's a couple of maps there that show the early planning. There was supposed to be a tunnel of 450 meters into this local ice cap. And with all this being on the sort of doorstep of Longyearbyen and UNIS, then there's always the potential for lots of nice spin-off projects. But I wasn't working for UNIS at the time. I think you can blame Hannah for me working at UNIS. I know you're in the audience, Hannah. That's why I mentioned you. But as I say, there's just a few folk attached to UNIS loosely engaged with this project. It was mainly an external venture at the time. And to describe the site a little better, using some nice images from proper UNIS projects there. It's at the end of the road, basically. There's a mine access road, which affords good access to a local ice cap begins at about 450 meters in the lower part of Foxfonna and then goes up to about 800 meters. And it's a sort of place that's ideal for us, really, because the students don't go there much, but it has good access. So we can take them there, and it's a little bit different. And I'll talk about that a bit more later in terms of the learning experience. There's an active mine below, so we have these applied emphasis as well. The meltwater does leak into the mine. The miners have made that worse by mining into the glacier by accident in a few places. So, there's kind of applied glaciology projects that we can engage with the miners and look at the permafrost conditions there, some publications on that. So it's not far from UNIS or Longyearbyen, this ice cap. So UNIS is there. Sorry, nasty map from the web. You can see it's about 10 kilometers, I think, a little bit more maybe on the end of the road. The students tend to stick to the sort of area in the mountains surrounding UNIS, whereas the actual Foxfonna itself is on a mountain. Although there's a mine underneath it, you wouldn't really know once you're up there, and it's a lovely area of wilderness where there's no snowmobile traffic. We visited there. There's a bit more. I will get to the what we did and what the students get out of this in due course, but it's Friday afternoon, so I think I can talk a bit more widely about the thing. But I mean, we did go there, and it was, when we started this, it was quite cold still. The ice cap actually has some positive mass balances, so it actually accumulated when the project began. Our first site visit was minus 26 degrees in October. We don't really see temperatures like that anymore. Quite amazing. But we went there. We started in 2006. And the first thing to do was to excavate a test cave from inside the ice cap. And this is Bernard's friends who worked the Mer de Glace, where you have these ornate caves excavated from inside local glaciers there. I think it's the Mer de Glace, isn't it? Yeah, we didn't ask for anything quite like this, but we asked for a test cave to be constructed. And our role was to look at the the melting of the ice and the deformation of the ice as it flows. You can see there another tourist picture there of a woman walking in a nice tunnel that's been excavated. Imagine that glacier, Mer de Glace, is actually flowing quite fast. So in winter, that would deform, and any hotel rooms excavated in such a feature might actually change shape during the course of the tourist season, or so they thought at the time. So anyway, they built the test tunnel, and here it is. The top picture there shows somebody walking into the tunnel. And first mistake was in order to do easy maths on a tunnel like this, you need a semicircle or a circle because we wanted to model the deformation rate. We ended up with something that's straight-sided and has a semicircular roof to it, which makes describing it mathematically extremely difficult. But there you go. It's about 25 meters long. It was picked by hand in exactly the same way as the ornate caves of the Mer de Glace. It was ice picked out by 2 or 3 of the Frenchmen that Bernard knew. And we got to the site using the dog teams. If you look at the picture at the bottom left, you'll see my attempts to prevent the dogs taking a shortcut across rocks was completely unsuccessful. That was very uncomfortable when I took that photograph. And yeah, we had this test site, and we then put markers inside the tunnel, and we put ablation stakes on top of the glacier. And the idea was to gradually involve students in looking into the fate of this venture as climate proceeded. Now, at the time, because it's at 800 meters, we weren't really expecting too much change because, the snow density, for example, is high up, has hardly changed in the last 15, 20 years. So there's not a lot of rain up there. Things happen in more or less stable, similar manner each winter up there. But things have got so different now that there has been a lot of climate change impacts on this venture. And so we'll just fast forward a bit from like 2007 to about 2011, I think, in the wild, and see some quite dramatic changes. You can see some stakes we put in there. You can see how we did it. We did them manually, and those stakes have been running ever since now. So we started with the 2007 and 8 water year, and we've kept it going ever since, thanks almost exclusively now to UNIS students and also visiting students as well. So there's our stake network. We focused on the top ice cap as the diagram shows on the right there, and immediately, I don't know if you have any experience thinking about how glaciers change and how you teach that, but the immediate thing is, this is not a valley glacier. This is actually a radially flowing ice cap. Things are a little bit different here. And that's really one of the first things I really liked about this, is that if I bring this into teaching, everything everyone reads about these systems is for a 2D profile down a valley glacier that flows in one direction. And here we have a system that's very common in Norway and on the mainland and in Svalbard. We have a plateau ice field that's very different, and it flows radially, and it's very much at the mercy of the wind. So that's the first hint that we got something a little bit different here that can enrich the sort of teaching and learning and the research we do there. So yeah, that's just an early DEM showing how, back in 2005, we were just getting into this kind of sort of, stuff that everyone does now with a drone and draping drone images over photogramically constructed DEMs. We're very proud of doing that back then, but we used it to describe these principles early on to the students. And yeah, it was quite a challenge working there. So, like I say, we're at 800 meters, and back in only 2007, that meant accumulation was still possible. And the very first year we started, we had this. And so you can just see our ablation stakes, our weather stations were all buried, and we had quite big snow years then. Now, when you have actually, if you have accumulation surviving, it does make teaching glacier mass balance to students quite a lot more complicated. But maybe I've got time for that later. Because we share the road with a mine, you can see a big coal hopper there being taken up the road. I wasn't at UNIS at the time. I was kind of oblivious to all this. I was driving a snow scooter up the road with a huge coal machinery up ahead of me, power lines above that. Quite a difficult place to work. And in fact, nobody really wants to take responsibility for this road. So this might be one of the challenges to maintaining this site in the long term. Yeah, got off to a good start in terms of accumulation and yeah, just lots of nice winter field work. And then by 2011, things had already begun to change. You can see one of the ablation stakes there that we drilled in there. This is one of a postdoc of mine from Sheffield. We started by bringing Sheffield students here to maintain the program. It kind of works because at high elevation, you could have a field class there in August. But obviously, as summers get longer, field classes for end of season ablation surveys have to get later and later in the year. They move into the new calendar, the semester, and yeah, these things you don't really think about until you're actually running a program like this. Yeah, you can see there's a little glacier there with almost no snow left on it at all. So there's our first indication that we're starting to witness big mass losses. So big melty seasons, long summers of long melt. And glaciers, very little snow cover at the end of the melt period to survey with the students. And look at the cave. That's the entrance to the cave. There's some students in the background there for scale. You can see the tunnel has done two things. It's partially filled in with meltwater and frozen, and that's closed, pinched. You've lost a lot of the depth of the tunnel there, and also the ice cap has retreated. So we learned two things there. It's a cold-based cold ice cap. So when meltwater percolates into a void, it refreezes, and you lose that refreezing. Won't take you won't lose that until the surface melting and the ice retreats past that point. So you've got retreating ice but refreezing. And this is one of the strange, unexpected consequences of change here. If you lose your winter, or if you lose your snow cover, you lose your insulating blanket, and cold ice temperatures prevail, but you've got less and less ice each summer as it melts. So we've got a doorway there that's effectively to nowhere. And if you look down from the other side, you can get a feel for that. There's a doorway there and the ice is gone. You can see where the base of the tunnel was. Quite unusual, and not a lot of things we can show the students about the internal deformation of the ice cap. It's essentially, it didn't deform. It was very, very cold ice, barely moving, but melting back more and more each summer. That's looking in. Yeah, you can see you can no longer stand in that tunnel. You've lost the deeper straight sides of it, and now it's just you can crawl in on a little bit of void that's been left. And this is all long gone now. So yeah, the ice hotel was never really a thing. It was always going to suffer from these problems, made worse by the fact that the floor of the tunnel was flat instead of inclined slightly up glacier. So you have drainage of any percolating summer waters. But all along, I really didn't think this venture was a good idea, but I was guilty of capitalizing on the funding to get something going on a local ice cap. Okay, so the ice hotel concept then ended around this period, and quite dramatically, as I need to explain now. No, sorry, I'll do that shortly. First of all, here's a shot. Okay, this is increasingly the students are involved in this, the measurement of this now that the ice hotel is a dead duck, if you like. It's now a teaching venture. These are UNIS students. The photo there shows, it's like, how many students does it take to change a light bulb? It's a kind of like that joke. It's it looks like I'm demonstrating inefficiency there, but I want you to think about, this is one of the values of just doing this. I asked the students to measure how long that stake is, and then I witnessed 4 students trying to do it, and when one could do it. And this is all, there's loads of group work kind of uh, ethos in here that you could, bring into this. You only need 2 at most to do it. So we go through the real basics. You have to measure how long that stake is, how you're going to do it in a big melt year. When do you need to do it? And the other one is, what is the bottom? Where do you measure it to? At the bottom, you often have preferential melt around the bottom of the stakes. So you need some kind of collar to remove the uncertainty of knowing when to stop your measurement, because there's quite a big depression around it. So it's just a good example of how you demonstrate something that's intrinsically straightforward in the classroom. Then you go out and do it, and then you suddenly realize that you suddenly witness how they realize things are more complicated and they need further thought. So anyway, this has been going on since 2011, and yeah, the students have played a great role, and I think they get a lot out of it. And I'll go through some of that later, because it's not all about measuring how long a stake is, as I will show you. I also told, when we came across the weather station, that as in need of maintenance, I described the famous Iwo Jima photograph on the right. None of them were aware of it, so I asked them to reenact it so I could take another photograph. I love the 2 dead students there, lying there as if they've been casualties of war. I haven't got a clue what the gentleman on the left is doing, but I just love this moment. They were sort of able to remove the weather station, and we had a bit of fun while doing it. And again, it's one of those things you learn. It's a no-brainer. It's a big melt year. Where you put your weather station is important. How often you need to lower it is also important. So these are the kind of things that you don't realize you're learning until you do it. But yeah, where are they now? This is the sensitivity I was alluding to earlier. So, I'm still here in Svalbard. I left full time for Svalbard during Brexit. I'm still in Norway. The UK isn't worth returning to. That's what the trapped thing alludes to. Jon Ove is still Norway's favourite glaciologist, and he's teaching on the course for us up in Svalbard. Bernard Le Fauconnier had pension issues and is now working the cruise ship scene in East Greenland, when I last remember. But the last 2 characters, this is I'll be quite, yeah, Monica has been, obviously, some of you might be aware of this, but Monica is a very creative person, but sometimes a very abrasive one. So there are very mixed opinions about her. She's a friend of mine and a great author now, and some of her books are quite fun. But the chap here, Robert, ended up in actually serving sentence for fraudulent use of funds. And there was a while, and when we were very concerned that our research project was included in this potential classification of misuse of funds. Okay, so Robert Hermansen spent a short spell in jail, and this actually was the main thing that brought everything to an end. The beginning of this case. You do still see him in town. He remains extremely popular, and he's a very very entertaining character. I did enjoy working with him quite a lot, as indeed a lot of other people do. And Monica's the same. But yeah, quite an unusual end to that story. And from then on, really, this is all about UNIS running this resource for teaching. Now, so this is the bit where I ought to try and focus on the sort of learning outcomes and how this sort of action is useful for teaching and learning practices. I do think about that, and I have had a few moments to put something down for you today. But essentially, what we've got here is another example of sort of co-production of long time series, but just with an unusual beginning, really. It wasn't planned like this, but a lot of these things can't be planned because of the way we're running these departments nowadays. or the way we're told to run them. So I want to go through a few things here. The first obvious thing is there's a lot of effort behind the data. This is Jack Kohler's famous animation. This is very old, so it's not really an animation, but here's a glacier. There's a state network on it where we measure winter accumulation at multiple points. We average those to produce one number that turns up in a paper that the students read. We then do the same for summer ablation, and that's reduced to one data point as well, if it's a nice spatially representative network. And then we look at the difference to produce another number, and that's expressed usually in a column, along a column, in a sort of column. I don't know what you call that plot, actually. It's like a line graph that's been made with columns. But when we obviously, in the UK, we teach glaciology. It often feels quite mediocre because you just can't take the students through the effort that's invested in producing that long time series, even just going from one data point, producing one data point for 1 year. So this is a good example of how long-term data co-production with students is really rewarding, because it really is. It can be done with just the measurement of simple state network and with quite simple tools, as some of you probably know. So that's the first thing I wanted to emphasize. This is a really good example of how low sort of effort is, well, reasonably low effort is can result in quite rewarding data resources for teaching. And in terms of, because we live on the ice, we get to it often. We live near the ice, I should say, and it's so important that students learn about the diversity of snow and ice surfaces and how they're changing. Like I say, Foxfonna used to be really high up, so in winter the snow density barely changed. It was dry snow. There's never any rain up there because it's at 800 meters. But then the melt season comes, and there's quite an amazing evolution of that surface. And so we can't, we don't go there so often that we see that evolution everywhere, but we can go, we can go at certain times of the year where we can get students thinking about space for time substitution. And we can walk up a glacier. We're going sort of, as we go up we go back in time as we go up in elevation. We have younger surfaces at higher elevation that have been subject to less ablation. So these, again, especially with even with a radially flowing ice cap, we've got this lovely space for time substitution that we can teach while we're on the ice, and we can show the students that that ice surface they're looking at tells quite a story, especially if you go in the latter part of summer. So you've got the whole thing there laid before you, in terms of dry snow that's not really changed that much, although it has undergone some ablation, all the way down through the superimposed ice from where the snowmelt refroze when it met the cold ice surface earlier in summer. And then lower down glacier, we've got the dirty glacier ice being exposed. So it's one of those trips where the students think they're just going out to learn about the mass status of an ice cap, but then they realize that they're on actually a living dynamic surface that you can see several stages of its evolution at once through this space for time substitution, for example. And of course, we really can run with this, because there's the poor ice cap there in the bottom right, the end of summer as seen from space. So we've got all these radial ice flow lines, these isochrones, if you like. They're not all individual flow bands from each year, but it really helps us appreciate the students as we do our fieldwork today. We walk up the glacier, we are going, all right, my brain's rubbish, sorry. If we walk down a glacier, we're going back in time. So the younger ice is at the top and the older ice is exposed at the bottom. And then we can pull out some of our research resources that have made use of the student mass balance data and show, well, hey, we've actually carbon dated the ice at the bottom and carbon dated the ice along these isochrones, and here's how old it is. And then suddenly some of the applications we can start the students thinking about if I were looking for contaminated ice, where would you expect it? And then they obviously realize it's at the top of the ice, but maybe the ice has lost so much mass these days that we're actually no longer have a repository of post-industrial ice, and we need to go and look somewhere else where there's healthier accumulation to find the younger contaminated ice. This is one of the things we show. Just because we have these beautiful radial ice flow lines, we make them think as you're walking perpendicular to these flow lines, you're going forwards in time. We've done the biology. It's a living surface, I said. I actually mean that. The dark bands are so visible. So you've got to draw to the attention the fact that a lot of them are bioflocculated dust layers formed by cyanobacteria sequestering dust and growing around it. So actually, all those points there you see, we actually got the students to map the dust distribution on the ice with photography and then process it. And then we actually gave sterile samples to biologists to say, look, who is that? Are they cyanobacteria, snow algae? What are they? And this is another where we're able to bring research into the teaching for the following year. But by mapping those dirt bands, we learned a lot, and those green dots there show where the chlorophyll is. So we can produce chlorophyll maps and say, you can see the circles are bigger in the south-facing aspects of the glacier. So photosynthesis is happiest where the exposure to the sun is most pronounced. So the students are able to leave there knowing that this is actually a living skin, this melt layer on the glacier. I'm using another colleague's phrase. This dynamic ice surface is blooming every summer, and it grows biomass and it makes it darker, so the ice melts more and so on. There's a fantastic kind of spin-offs just from saying, from having these mass balanced data resources, we turn them into, we show how a mass ice or water balance resource underpins other research. Here's another example. This is about how the snow brings with it microbes that then survive. So we can use a look at a mass balance of cells. And then Archana Dayal for a PhD looked at when are those cells mostly living and when do they die. So we have this huge changes in the abundance of cells, and they all begin to die suddenly and they get washed off. And all this insight, is underpinned by understanding the accumulation and ablation calendar as revealed by students going there every year, measuring the inputs and then measuring the losses and measuring the storage through the generation of new glacier ice. Once you've got that, you can sample those different forms and then apply it to other things like contaminants, cells, or nutrients as we've got here. So this whole thing is underpinned this really broad understanding of processes on ice caps, which I quite like. I'm going to try and stop soon. I better have. This has gone on longer than I expected. Some achievements here then. If Foxfonna was an academic, they would be eligible for promotion to professor if they published a bit more, but Foxfonna supported enough PhD students and grants. And there's just some examples there. We don't just do glaciology. It's a bit of a turn off for me just to look at how much ice is there. It's actually how is the changing volume of ice affecting other things, and that's where we've done a lot. And there's been some lovely projects by others, Mark Thurs, Arwen Edwards, a few others, really emphasizing the landscape change associated with the ice cap and the idea that the ice cap is an ecosystem. Nice interdisciplinary stuff here, not just me supervising this. So the other benefits, it's doorstep science, isn't it? Regular visits are possible and a long-term commitment is possible because it's near where we are and we have students every year and the students can gain access to it. But I think it's important that while it's local, it's not their playground, it's actually mine. So I like to show off how well I know the place. Sorry, I've got an ego, but I'm part of the reason I'm doing it is because I just love it. And I'm taking them somewhere where they don't go every weekend. They go to Longyearbyen and Longyearbyen kicks, whereas I take them to Foxfonna, but it's still easy to get to. And you can, once you set up term projects, the students can get there easily as well, which is very important. And also it's an ice cap, so it's safe. It's really hard to get avalanched on an ice cap when you're above everything. So it's a place where I feel a lot better about sending student-only groups. Okay, I think I might have yeah. There are other examples in Sheffield. I did the same doorstep thing with an instrumented watershed. It's the water balance now, not the ice mass balance. It's the same thing, and I guess lots of people are doing this in Norway. This is obvious thing to do, but with instrumented watersheds, I mean, the data quality there that we got from local small catchments in Norway, sorry, in the UK, and I guess you could do the same in Norway. It was just wonderful because we can go there to fix things and ensure a high data capture. We've got continuous data there. We've got discrete sampling data of students running pump samplers, really engaging in having a local instrumented watershed and just going for it and actually learning to care about watershed. And if something goes wrong, going back to fix it. It was not just this one shot, demonstrate it and then say, oh, well, it didn't work, never mind. Yeah, really making the students get to the point where they really invest in it. And that's really rewarding. And then the data resources you have for teaching afterwards in digital class or whatever you call them, data workshops and so on are really good. So the challenges to doing this sort of thing, because this is basically common sense teaching, isn't it? So it's the usual ones, isn't it? Curriculum stability. You can have new managers, agents of change that want to influence the curriculum and think they improve it. You've got to police that. You've got to fight back against it. You've got to people who keep reinventing how to implement skills teaching in curricula. This really drives me nuts. I'm really old, right? So I've seen every model, and I've seen in Sheffield in particular, my former role. You used to see people saying, right, we're going to do it this now. Skills teaching as discrete modules. Then 3 years later, it doesn't work. Skills teaching now will be embedded in substantive theory modules. All this reinvention of the wheel stuff. If only we could speak often about the benefits of curriculum stability. We keep this kind of independent project, independent learning rewards within the curriculum where it keeps working. That'd be great. Don't keep changing things. Don't keep changing your courses as well. I mean, we're having trouble with that at UNIS, but there's some different issues behind that. It's time sensitive, and climate change is making that even more of an issue. The accumulation season is done in May. That's usually an assessment period, and the ablation season is now done in September. That can be an early start of the semester, different years, so these things are important. Staffing stability as well. We're small, so we struggle with this at UNIS. If only we could have self-organized groups, so when one staff member goes on study leave, we know this thing is going to carry on and it will look after itself. Trying to get that across to staff who can be difficult. They have very strong views on what they want to teach and when. Future-proofing your curriculum is really hard work with staffing changes and so on. And then this is the changing duty of care. Like in the UK now, there's a lot of institutions can't even tell their students to just catch the bus and go and look after a site. They have to be taken there. And this is quite frustrating, I think. But I'm not sure what it's like in Norway, because I don't teach on the mainland so much. But we have duty of care responsibilities. In UNIS, we focus on the important one, the safety. But we also lay on transport as well. But students sometimes take a taxi, and we pay for that. Those are the issues. Anyway, I think that might be it. Apart from the usual, maybe worse in Svalbard than other places, but we're struggling now to operate on our doorstep, and it's crazy. If you've got a university and you want to control environmental access, you should allow a university to operate on its doorstep. You shouldn't force it to go further afield and use more carbon to get students out there. There should be some dialogue that allows us to really add value to teaching and learning without transport needs in the extreme. So, but this could be a peculiar thing to UNIS. I'm not really sure what other mainland institutions, what pressures or problems they face with getting their students out to run their own sort of independent or group project stuff or this kind of learning. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, thanks for listening. There's Mike Hamry's old photo back in the day when Foxfonna looked healthy, and I think I can leave it there. Is anyone there? I can't hear a thing.
Thank you, Andy. That was a great talk. Really interesting, especially with the isotel and how everything changes.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing then. I can maybe see you a bit better. Hang on.
Yeah.